Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. Welcome to the show, everybody. We've got a great show for you today. We've got an author. He's also a publisher. So we're going to talk about his publishing company a little bit, because if you are an author and you're looking for a publishing company, I got a guy. I know a guy, and he's going to he might be able to work with you, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But primarily, we're going to talk about his book that he's got out, and it's called Poppy. It's about his granddad, who was a pioneer in Colorado, and he served in World War II. By the way, thank you for his service. And he was worked in a hospital in the Pacific Theater, and Jack tells all about this and all about his story. So, Jack, welcome to the show. How are you? Pronounce your last name, because I have a tendency to screw them all up.
It's quite all right, Kevin. It's Jack Maher, Maher. We are Irish, and it used to be Omar, O''Mar. But like so many of the Irish that came over, they dropped the O because of the discrimination that existed back in the late early 1900s.
Yeah, and the same thing happened with the German population. My grandfather was a Saltzman, and it was Mann. They dropped the extra M, so make it a little bit more Americanized. Isn't it stupid what we do sometimes?
It really is, I must say. Can I tell you a quick Irish joke?
Yes, please.
So what do you call an Irishman who sits on the porch, Kevin?
I don't know. What do you call an Irishman that sits on the porch?
Patio furniture.
I love that. And yeah, and so did Poppy come over from Ireland?
No, that's on the other side of the family. I'll tell you a little bit about it. Again, the book, if I can just hold it up here, is called
Please do.
Poppy, a novel about a colorful Colorado life, and that's him with my grandmother on the cover, and they look really stylish in their cowboy outfits. So his real name was Eric Douglas, and Eric was part of a family that lived in Evergreen. And those of you who have ever been to Colorado are probably familiar with it. It's just an hour west of Denver, and they lived in a beautiful log home that is today a museum, and it's the Highwan Heritage Park. And this log home in which they lived was full of Native American art, and the story behind that is really interesting. Eric's father, his name was Winfred Douglas, and he was an Episcopalian priest, and he loved the Native Americans because they healed him. He came from the New York area to Colorado in the 1800s because, like so many during that period of time, he was having a lot of problems with his health, especially with his lungs. And so people would come out here to the crisp, dry air of Colorado. A lot of tuberculosis patients. He didn't have tuberculosis. He had other things. But that's why they came, was to be healed. Well, as part of that healing, he was at a sanitarium where he met this beautiful nurse who ran it, who was my great-grandmother. Her name was Dr. Joe. At any rate, as part of this healing, he decided kind of on his own that he was going to get some fresh air. This was the time where, the feeling was that people like Teddy Roosevelt kind of led the way, that if you were out on a horse and you were spending time out in deserts and mountains on horseback, you could kind of build yourself up if you had problems physically and mentally and spiritually. Well, anyway, so here's this Episcopalian priest, and he decides on his own just to take a bedroll and a horse, and he starts going throughout the Southwest, throughout the Four Corners region in particular in Colorado. That's where New Mexico and Utah and Arizona and Colorado all meet. And he befriended the Hopi. The Hopi just loved my great-grandfather, and they took him in. They made him a blood brother. And he spent 6 months with this particular group of Hopi. And he returned full of vigor and just a changed guy, not only from a health perspective, but he also came away with a deep love and an appreciation for Hopi culture and their language and their art and their spirituality. Again, he was an Episcopalian priest, but he didn't force his religion on them. He just had the knowledge of their works and their practices. Well, anyway, he ended up collecting a lot of this art. He'd go and buy it and put it in this home. They had a boy named Eric who grew up in this atmosphere, which was, again, a home, a beautiful log home filled with this Native American art. And so he fell in love with it just like his dad. And so with that background, Eric was heavily involved with the Denver Art Museum. And at that time, in the early 20th century, there wasn't a lot of appreciation for Native American art. I think white culture looked at it as sort of like souvenirs you'd buy when you got off the train in Santa Fe. Well, Eric and his dad both realized, no, this has the same value as a French Renaissance painting or an urn from Greece, and it needs to be in a museum. So Eric made it his mission to elevate this art and champion the artists who made it.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And he got familiar with the Indian culture and their values and their spiritual practices and what they did at that time. It really was a fascinating time, don't you think?
Absolutely. And the thing that strikes me the most, and that I tried to point out in this book, is how much these people accomplished. Maybe it's because they didn't have cell phones and there wasn't a whole lot of distraction going on. But between the art and the literature and the music and how much they put into it, Eric's father was a music liturgist, and he loved a sacred piece of music called plain song, which he would incorporate into Episcopalian services. And he made it his mission, along with the Native American art, to score these ancient pieces of chant music so it would be used in hymnals throughout the Episcopalian Church. And that was really what he was known for. His son, Eric Poppy, was more known for the Native American art. But this whole business with the Denver Art Museum started with Ann Evans. And if any of your viewers and listeners are familiar with Colorado history, the name Evans may ring a bell. He was our territorial governor, and he was infamously associated with the Sand Creek Massacre. It was a terrible chapter in Colorado history where soldiers were sent down to basically wipe out this group of Native Americans in a place called Sand Creek, and it's now a memorial site, a national memorial site. Well, anyway, Governor Evans' daughter, Ann, I think felt tremendous guilt over the fact that her dad was part of this and ordered this massacre. And so she spent her life trying to make reparations, in my opinion. And one of those reparations was to uplift Native American art and artists. And so she was a neighbor up in Evergreen of the Douglas family. And she recruited my grandfather and asked him if she would help him start what was then known as the Indian Arts Department at the Denver Art Museum. Today, it's known as the Native Arts Department. And it's a wonderful place to explore Native American art. There are all kinds of sand paintings and leggings and flutes and pottery, you name it. It's really the premier museum of its kind in the world. And the reason it is because of what Poppy did about collecting this material, convincing these artists, these Hopi and Navajo and Zuni, that their work needed to be in a museum. And you have to understand at that time, there was a real concern on the part of some people that some of these Native Americans were going to go away. They were going to vanish because of what white America was doing to them in terms of putting them on reservations and trying to eradicate their culture through Indian schools. Well, Poppy, again, would go down and collect the finest of the fine art that he could among these creators, put it in museums, create a revenue stream for the artists so that their work not only was in the museum, but would also be sold as high-end art. And that was his entire life. But it was all because of Ann Evans recruiting him in the very beginning to help start this project at the Denver Art Museum.
Well, and I'm so glad that he did too, because so much of Indian Native American art and what they did has been lost to history.
That
And
is true. I'll give you a good example of that. He befriended a potter named Nampeo. And oh, hello! Look who's
Hi, Jack.
joining us. It's good to see you.
You as well.
he just popped in.
Just popped in while we're talking about Poppy. I was just talking about a Hopi potter, very talented Hopi potter that my grandfather Poppy knew and befriended, named Nampeo. And she lived in a place called First Hano Mesa in Arizona. And her claim to fame was she lived, if you can imagine these adobe boxes atop a mesa with ladders, you may have seen pictures or paintings of them.
Oh,
that was where her family, the Corn clan, lived. And so Nampeo, when she was young, she would strap this big, heavy canteen on her back, and she would go down this trail to the desert floor below and would gather clay that she would use for these unique pots, and not just the clay, but also fragments of pots that her ancestors had made. And remember, these were pots that were used for everyday cooking, and the practice was to throw a lot of it over the side when they got, worn out. And then she would find these fragments that had these beautiful markings on them and then incorporate them into her own designs, so that she was in a way channeling the voices of her ancestors from centuries ago into her more modern works of art. And so Eric recognized just how unique this pottery from Nampeo was. And if you go to the Denver Art Museum today, you will see some of those examples of her work, much of it collected by my grandfather.
And by the way, Jack, I got to tell you, because Burchell, it's been a while since I've been to Colorado. I went to Boulder for a little bit, but Burchell spent a month in Colorado, and she just had I don't want to speak for her, but I think she had a really good time. Where in Colorado were you, Burchell?
So I was near Monte Vista, Alamosa area. It is not really completely known of, but in the St. Louis Valley. And I have a lot of history, a lot of people there from generations and generations of my family, from Germans and Native Americans that came together and created our lifeline. So it is different when you are at a place like that. And I think things tend to slow down when we think in forms of that and where our life is now. It either slows it up or speeds it up or slows it down, because when I come home, it's kind of shock. And then when I first go out there, it's a little bit of shock. And I think there is a possibility of being able to make harmony and kind of create both, because both matter, right?
Absolutely. And in the case of Nampeo and her people, there is such a connection with the past. There is no past. It's the present, and the spirits are all around. And that is so reflective in the art as well. The one thing I'd like to say about Poppy, too, is that he wasn't looking at the art of the Hopi and the Zuni and the Cheyenne in terms of anthropology. He was looking at it purely as art that could be enjoyed. He was always asked, well, what do these symbols mean? Is this a migration pattern of birds? And he said, don't worry about that. Just enjoy it for the beauty. Look at it. And is this something that you can see in your home? He was always trying to encourage people to think about that. And so, as I say, that's how he dedicated his life, not only in championing the artists and the art, but in the way that it was displayed in a museum. Could I tell you about that?
Yes, but I need to take this break real quick, and then when we're going to come back, we're talking, by the way, with a good Irish young man. His name is Jack O'Mara, or something like that. And because Rochelle, before you got here, they had to drop the O because there was folks that were discriminatory towards the Irish. Can you believe that for a moment or two? So we need to take
Kevin.
quick, I know, but I got to tell you, because it just doesn't make any sense to me, this whole thing about the other and not being good enough and are different and stuff. We're all wonderful creatures and wonderful creations, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk about real estate right now.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
It's not fun.
And welcome back to Positive Talk.
It's working.
It's working. Yay, it's working.
It was for a minute, at least.
Is it not working now?
No.
Oh my, for heaven's sakes, Jack, it is just magical that you are here. And by the way, and I just want to say this, and I think Rochelle has got more history than I do, but you go back into the mid 1800s and people that were, and the stories that people came forward from that time. And my family moved out from I don't know where, and they came here, and so we don't have that kind of rich history that you do in Colorado, and the stories from your great grandpa and your grandpa and your dad and all. It really is cool to see.
Well, I appreciate that. And yes, we are a fifth generation family in Colorado, but we pale in comparison to Nanpeyo and people like her, who go back centuries. And, to the point earlier that Rochelle was making, that when you go into the Southwest or you visit places like Mesa Verde, there is such a different quality to the air, to the land, to the water, and it does feel timeless. And if you ever come back to the San Luis Valley, I hope you come when the sandhill cranes visit in the springtime.
I was just there. Yeah.
Okay. It's one of the most beautiful things you can ever witness right here in our own country.
Hundreds of people at the same time.
Yeah, the people, maybe not so much. The cranes, you love. And the sound they make, isn't it such a beautiful sound when they're wheeling in the sky above you?
I don't even really know how to describe it. I didn't know birds could make that noise while they were flying.
Yeah, and there's so many of them. Oh, it's just,
they're huge. We don't think about how big they are until they're right above you.
Yeah, it's almost prehistoric. And yeah. Kevin, you want something magical, you've got to go to the San Luis, the Crane Festival. It's in Monte Vista every spring.
We'll have to make arrangements to get there together, Rochelle, perhaps next year. But by the way, we're talking with Jack. And say your last name, because I screwed up so badly all the time.
No, it's quite all right. It's Maher, just like Bill Maher, but we're no relation.
Bill Maher. Oh, you're better than Bill Maher. I got to tell you that.
Well, anyway, if I could pick up where we left off, is that okay?
You may.
So I was talking about some of the methods that my grandfather pioneered in terms of exhibiting this Native American art at the Denver Art Museum. He had a saying way back when he was the curator, and he said, he would look around at the museum, and he said, all of this stuff is trapped under glass. That's what he said. And he said, only an egghead would want to spend more than a few minutes in here. And so he started thinking like a visitor might think. And he had a similar, like a companion that he didn't even know about in New York, a fellow who was with the Museum of Modern Art named René de Harnecourt. And somehow they both were developing this same concept of how to make the museum more interactive for people that would come through it. And so they would think about, let's get this stuff out from the cabinets. Let's put it up on pedestals. Let's put the pot in a niche, and let's paint the background so that it looks like the environment from which it came. In the case of a Hopi seed pot and the kind of yellow clay that Nampayo would make the pot from, they would paint so that it would reflect the area from which it came. Let's put lighting in a very dramatic way so that these Kachina masks, these Kachina dolls, would look as if they're lit by campfire. And that way, it would just be a lot better experience for this visitor. In the case of René de Harnecourt in New York, he would actually take a piece of paper and map it all out in a 3D view as far as what a viewer might see. And as it turned out, the two of them, once they realized, we're kind of working on the same stuff here, they ended up teaming up on a remarkable exhibit in 1938 when the Golden Gate Bridge opened. They celebrated with a World Expo that was just an amazing place. The Army Corps of Engineers built up an artificial island in San Francisco Bay in 1938 to celebrate the opening of the Golden Gate and Oakland bridges. And on this island, they would put exhibit halls. And one of them was called the Indian Court. And in this court, they asked my grandfather and René in New York to put together this massive exhibit of different Native American arts and crafts. And the only way you could get out to this exposition site was by a water taxi. It's just amazing. And at night, they would light it up with multicolored searchlights that would, shoot hundreds of feet into the sky on the island. And people kind of gave it the nickname of Treasure Island. It just looked like this magical place out in the bay. It's not there anymore, but for a short period of time, it was this vibrant place. They also brought in creators to demonstrate, how do you make a sand painting? How do you weave a blanket? And so they would ask these native creators to come from Arizona and New Mexico and demonstrate what they knew for the people that would come to this Indian court. Just fascinating.
Well, and it's in 1938, I think is what you said. That must have been like when they were developing the aesthetics for the museum. That was kind of not done back then. This must have been very uniquely original to them.
It was extremely innovative. And again, some of the techniques that they pioneered at New York's MoMA and at the Denver Art Museum, they then transferred into this experience in San Francisco. At the time, of course, the U.S. was still struggling with the Great Depression, the effects of it. And so a lot of Works Progress Administration money was used so that it could hire plasterers and workmen that, otherwise wouldn't have had any work to come and help them with this Indian court and building it out. I'll give you a really good example of their innovation. So at this exhibit in 1938, they had a mural of a Cheyenne war party on a wall, massive mural of these horse riders and the chiefs, full feathers, and they were just coming at you, almost like a 3D experience. But to make it 3D, they actually implanted real feathers on the headdresses. Think of how long that must have taken. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, they piped a tube of compressed air from a hidden opening so that the feathers rippled as if they were riding in the wind. 1938. Think about that.
That's inventive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to touch bases again on what they migrated to Colorado. Do you remember, or do you know what date or when that was? Because that was a long time ago.
Yeah, as far as my family, yes, the Douglas family. Actually, it was Dr. Josepha, who was my great grandfather's wife. She and her mom came here post Civil War, and Evergreen at that time was sort of just this vast, beautiful mountain area, and there wasn't a lot of there were a scattered ranch or two, but it just wasn't very well occupied. But they fell in love with the mountains and with Evergreen, and so they bought this little piece of land. They engaged a Scottish architect named Jock Spence, who was known for his boat building, to start this beautiful home that started as a hay barn, very humble hay barn. And then by the time he finished, it was 25 rooms. And he hand carved much of the house with the help of local workmen. Today, it's a museum that you can travel to and visit. And it's a great place for school children in particular to learn about the pioneer life and about my family and about Jock Spence, the architect. He used a really unique formula of mud and honey to chink these ponderosa log planks that he used to build this home. And he was very eco-friendly, kind of like the Douglas family was ahead of their time with the way they would innovate. He did the same with the architecture because he built around trees so he wouldn't have to cut them down. If you go up there today, the dining room is actually, there's a tree that the dining room was built around. So it's kind of, so they wouldn't have to cut it down. Really ahead of their time.
Has the tree continued to grow? And
oh, Kevin, your questions. I think it is towering over the house. So yes, ponderosa pine take a long time to grow though, but it looks very much now as it did when they lived there. And because my great grandfather was an Episcopalian priest, he also had a chapel built in this octagonal section of the home. And it's a small chapel. It only seats probably 25 to 30 people, but it's such an interesting place to visit because of his love for the Hopi and these other native peoples. He would integrate some Native American touches into this chapel. He also had a statue of Mary in one corner, and that was kind of not an Episcopalian thing to do. He kind of leaned Catholic a lot of the time. His superiors got on him about that. But he also just, I think he was a unique individual that would look at different practices and cultures and kind of integrate them a little bit into his own lifestyle.
And I gotta say, and Rochelle shared this with me on her trip over there, which was, I'm from Seattle. Rochelle came to visit me in Seattle, and it's traffic, and it's people, and it's more people, and it's more traffic. And then in Colorado, and parts of it, yes, Denver's busy and Boulder's busy, but there are lots of parts of Colorado that are really serene, and you can really slow down a little bit, can't you?
Oh, you absolutely can. It takes a little bit of driving to do it. But, my favorite is where she was. I love the Monte Vista area. I love Mesa Verde. But we have many, many state parks. Of course, we have Rocky Mountain National Park as well. We have many beautiful state parks that are located near lakes and reservoirs. And I like to pack in a little pack raft that I have. And there's nothing like getting out and floating on some water below the Sangre de Cristo Mountains that still have snow on them. I sound like a Chamber of Commerce guy, but Colorado is truly a beautiful, special place. We've had a lot of growth that is just, in many ways made life here a little more challenging than it used to be. But yes, there are still many places that you can find the serenity and the kind of soul cleansing that I think a lot of people look for these days.
And it's for somebody who, like me, who lives near a city and kind of has, it boggles the mind because it's like I asked Rochelle, how long does it take you to, like, I don't know, get to a Home Depot? How long does it take from where you were
3.5 hours.
to get to a Home Depot? 3.5 hours. That's like from here to Portland. It's amazing how that all works. And
You
by the
got
way,
a plan.
Yep.
yeah, I would imagine so. We're talking with Jack Maher. We're going to talk about his book some more about Poppy because it's becoming a thing. It really is a historical, accurate depiction of what life was like all the way back from, by the way, the Civil War ended in 1865. And so from that time period forward, when there was a lot of westward movement and stuff, and people settled in Colorado and stuff, and his grandpa Poppy was one of those folks. And it's great to have you here, Jack. And the book is out on Amazon and everybody else, right?
That is correct. And if you go to my website, I've got some multimedia on there because in my previous life, before I was a novelist, I was a TV news guy. And so there's a lot of multimedia on my site, which I'm sure you will link up. But just so you have it, it's sandgoatmanorpublishing.com. It's a mouthful, sandgoatmanorpublishing.com. But I've got a profile on the Douglas family home I mentioned. And it's about some kids that go visit and learn about the pioneer life. And I've got a reading from the book that I do and some photos of my family and from this era. It's pretty interesting stuff.
And we also need to, he was on TV, Rochelle. He was on TV. So would you like to take us into this break, Rochelle?
Yes, thank you for being with us, everybody. Again, we're with Jack Maher, right? Maher.
You got it.
And Kevin, of course, myself. Don't go anywhere. I have a good question when we come back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Rochelle. That's her. She's right there. And Jack Maher is with us. He's, by the way, Bill Maher's an unknown, older, better-looking brother. Okay, maybe not.
No.
But in any event, Rochelle, you have a question for Jack I would love for you to ask.
Yeah, so I want to take it all the way back because you have all this knowledge and know so many things about your family and your history and your past. When did that spark start? Was it something that you just kind of grew up into and you knew that you had history and it was shared with you through your life? Or is it something you just kind of discovered and then took it as far as you could?
Such a good question and kind of a long answer, so buckle in.
Okay.
So, okay. So, yes, they had this beautiful life up in Evergreen and with the Denver Art Museum and, you know, the roots stretching back to the Civil War era. My mom was actually adopted by the Douglas family. She was one of 3 children that they adopted. They were real givers. And so she grew up, you know, in this wonderful world up in Evergreen and amid all this art and this culture. Well, she ended up marrying a World War II veteran, my dad, whose name was Jack. And Jack very interesting trajectory because he was a Purple Heart recipient and a Bronze Star Medal recipient, and he was part of Normandy, and just he had it a little bit rough, like so many of those World War II guys. And like so many of his generation, he didn't really talk about what happened. All we knew was that he had been wounded in some kind of conflict with the Germans involving a hand grenade. And so he struggled really with those memories and whatever he encountered. And he eventually turned to alcohol to try to deal with a lot of that darkness. And so my mom and my dad, they did their best. But to be honest, we were pretty dysfunctional as a family. And so the real focus for us was just let's get the rent paid and let's get clothes on our backs and food on the table. And the whole thing about Poppy and all of the legacy attached to him was really not a big part of our growing up. Well, fast forward, I had this busy TV life. I was a reporter, anchor, TV news executive here in Denver, started the morning show that was at the time unheard of in 1980. Nobody was really doing morning television. And I was with that station, that NBC station in Denver for 34 years. And I got a call one day back in 2012 from the Denver Art Museum. They had tracked me down as one of the last living descendants of this man, Poppy, Eric Douglas. They said, hey, we know that you're Poppy's grandson. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we have a society dedicated to your grandfather. And we're wondering if you would lecture in front of us and tell us a bit about him. Well, I was panic stricken. I mean, I grew up like I've described with just little bits and pieces. I should say our dysfunctional family was saved by my grandmother, Frida, who is in this book. She was Eric's wife. And as I say, they were real giving. Not only did they adopt these 3 children and gave them a beautiful upbringing, but when my little family started falling apart after my dad died of a heart attack, I was only 14 at the time. My mom, who was dealing with a lot of mental illness, was spiraling. And Frida, my grandmother, swept in and stabilized our little family. And again, she had all the history. She lived it. She was part of it, but said very little, except one day when I was probably 16, she came into my bedroom with a newspaper supplement to the Denver Post. And it was all about the Douglas family and about the art museum and all the beautiful things up in Evergreen. And she said, Jack, I know we haven't really talked much about this, but this is your family. And it's a pretty good, account of it. So why don't you hang on to this? And I said, yeah, sure. Because I was a teenager and just, how they are. So that was all I had, was this supplement. Well, when I got this call to do this lecture, I did some really fast cramming. And I think I was able to cobble together about a 90-minute lecture that really did not do this man justice, but it opened up some windows to me that I really hadn't explored before. And after my busy TV life concluded, I made it my mission to try to write this book about him, to honor him in a way that, hopefully would introduce people to someone who is not well known among Colorado historians, really, but he did an awful lot for the Denver Art Museum and for these Native cultures. And so I spent 2 years. I camped in a lot of places they camped when they met these different Native American creators. And I spent time at the Denver Art Museum up in Evergreen, going through archives and letters and diaries. And so I just immersed myself in his life, and the result was this book.
Did you think that it would have gotten you to the point? Did you see that vision of where you are now? Or are you just like, wow, this is truly more than I could have imagined?
I would say it is truly more than I could have imagined, because it really was originally just something I wanted to do for my family, especially for my grandchildren. I should also mention that a big spark for this was sadly the unexpected sudden death of my beautiful Becky. We were together almost 49 years. And in 2019, she suffered a brain aneurysm, massive brain aneurysm. And there's a whole story attached to that as well. That's actually the subject of my second book that I'm finishing up now because it happened at our church. But when something like that happens, when you lose someone you love so deeply, you can do one of two things. You can spiral down into the grief and the sadness, or you can mine that sadness for creativity. And I think that's what I did. That really kind of helped lift me out of that grief, which I still experience, of course, 6 years later. But having a project like that, and I would say that to any of the people who are watching or listening this today, is that if you have something, whether you're a writer or an artist, or there is some pastime or pursuit that you love doing, channel that grief into that, and you'll be amazed at the therapy it can provide.
Finding passion and living your passion at any time of life is vital. Because, and I know that I'm sure feel this way, Jack. I don't want to, at the end of my days when I'm done, I don't want to have any regrets. I want to be able to look back and say, I've done what I set out to do, and this is a great thing. And by the way, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
That I haven't even known anybody 49 years. I can't imagine.
Me either.
Yeah, we met at a school dance, and that was, back when that's how you met girls and boys.
Mm-hmm.
And can I tell you the story? Do you have time for that?
Well,
Yeah.
I would be. Yes.
Okay. So there was this Catholic school in Denver. I was not Catholic. I was Episcopalian, as I mentioned. My great-grandfather was this Episcopalian priest and everything. And kind of Episcopalian light at that. I think, we made Christmas and Easter if we were lucky. But I heard about this school dance, and it was at a place called St. James Church in Denver. They had it in the gym. My best friend at the time, whose name was Kevin, his sister.
Must have been a very smart man.
Oh, he was amazing, incredible. But anyway, he asked me if I would help with the lighting for this band. It was a cover band named Phaedra, and they were really good. And they were getting quite a reputation around Denver. There was another big band at the time called Sugarloaf that actually had a top 40 hit called Green-Eyed Lady.
I know them. Yeah.
Green-Eyed Lady, that was a Denver band. And
Yeah.
Phaedra was in that same, atmosphere. Well, anyway, so they were playing at St. James, and I was there. And when I say I helped with the lighting, I had this multicolored box that I put on the stage next to the drums, and that was my contribution. Okay. But so they were playing a version of Neil Young's Cinnamon Girl. I'll never forget that. And I looked over, and there standing by the exit was this beautiful, beautiful girl who had hair the color of a shiny copper penny. And I was just thinking, well, she's way out of my league. No way. But I walked across the floor and I gave it a shot. I'm Jack. Would you like to dance? And she turned to me and she said, I'm Becky. And yes, I would. And that was the start of our 49-year love affair. And she was just such a bright, happy soul. And she lifted up, everyone she met. And I miss her every day, but she's still here. And as I say, this second book that I have just finished writing is about her, about this remarkable thing that happened at our church before her brain aneurysm. And it has set me on a spiritual journey that I am still on. That's included 2 pilgrimages, one to the Holy Land before the war and all the things that are happening now, and another to Marian apparition sites where Mary has appeared to people, to young people, to Lourdes, to Fatima, and a place called Medjugorje. And I've had some astounding experiences and graces that just continue. And so that's what that second book is about. It's right now with my family. I want to make sure that they're okay with everything I've written. And I just feel, without getting too, religious, that God has put me in an extraordinary story for a reason. And I feel that this story, if my family says it's okay, needs to be shared so that people can get to know what's happened to me and what happened to Becky and all the beautiful things that surrounded it.
And by the way, a couple things. First of all, thank goodness that you didn't let your doubts about yourself and that she was way out of your league prevent you from going over and saying, "Hey, do you want to dance? My name is Jack." Because none of that would have happened had you not done that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, she's with you every day. And she is so proud of the work that you're doing and the second book. And I think she's saying, heck yeah, you're going to publish that. What's the matter with you?
Well, thank you, Kevin.
We need to take our final break, and we'll be right back. That is a wonderful story, by the way. Don't you think, Rochelle?
I think it's beautiful. I'm so thankful I started asking.
Me too. We'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at CISA.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Rochelle. The way Rochelle's dancing, the music works.
It was working.
Oh, praise be! I just got to say, and Jack, it is so great. By the way, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that you were on TV in Denver for 35 years, and there's somebody who's going to watch this and go, oh, "I remember him on the." In the morning and doing
let me just give you a little bit of background on that, because I wasn't like an everyday guy. I was the executive producer of the morning show, and I did do a lot of on-camera work, some series work and some special assignment work, but mostly I was in a booth, and you know all about this, Kevin, which basically I was the guy that would come in at midnight and line up the show and look at all the network feeds and put it all together so that you had a good show to watch. You know, a lot of people don't realize this, but all those wonderful anchors to this day that look so great on camera, they don't do a whole lot of the writing. A lot of that is done by people behind the scenes. And they're just sort of unsung heroes for the most part, not talking about me, but all the different producers that, I worked with over the years. And interestingly enough, one of my early writers at the NBC station in Denver was Tom Costello, who's now a senior correspondent at NBC News. And Tom and I just had lunch not so long ago, and we were just marveling at, the turns his career has taken. He is just one of the top correspondents in the business to this day. And it's a very tough business. The economics of it aren't working like it used to. But thank heavens, we still have people like Tom who are out there trying to do the best they can in this very challenging world of journalism and bringing truth and insight.
And I just want to say this is just an aside on my own thing, but what you did and what Tom does, there's no more fake news. That's not it. That's not what it is. And most journalists who are journalists are doing everything within their power to get the story right, to get it researched properly, to get it others to correspond with it, and to not to agree with it, or to more than one source is what I'm trying to say, and stuff. So, and you spent your whole life doing it, and that's remarkable.
Well, I think we had this conversation once off air, but I think we were lucky enough to be in the so-called golden age where, we had just a handful of stations in most markets, and people were kind of on the same page with stuff. And we had gatekeepers at my station for sure. Actual people, close to the old timey, editor with the green eye shade and rolled up sleeves that would go through your copy with a red pencil and would make sure that it was accurate and that it was balanced. And then, of course, it flowed and all of that. And I'll never forget the sign on our newsroom in Denver: accuracy first. That's the first thing you saw when you walked into our newsroom. And, I started when we were hot splicing film with glue, and I ended when we were in digital madness, trying to push stuff out to multiple platforms. And now, of course, today, everybody can be a correspondent. Everybody can be an anchor with just the phone in their pocket. And very different world for sure.
That is for sure. Rochelle, do you know who George Clooney is?
Yes. Are you serious?
Yes. Well, do you know who Edward R. Murrow was?
No.
He was a journalist in the 40s and 50s, and he has a famous saying, and there's a play out now that George Clooney stars in. That's the connection. And if anybody, it would be great for you to see that play. It's a marvelous work of what was going on in the newsroom back then when they were talking about communism and all of that kind of good stuff. And his tagline, my tagline is "Be kind to one another because each other's all we've got." His was, Jack, do you remember what his tagline was at the end?
Good night and good luck.
That was it. And sometimes it was more along the lines of good night and good.
Well, again, they weren't all angels. They weren't all saints. They had their flaws, Edward R. Murrow included. However, they really developed the kind of storytelling that set the standard for all that were to follow. And I used to teach a broadcast news course in Denver. And I would always try to play a clip of Edward R. Murrow from some of his World War II coverage during the Blitz in London, when he was on a rooftop and he was broadcasting back to the States, trying to describe what it was like to see the searchlights and then to see the bombers coming through and the light from the searchlights illuminating the bottom of these aircraft as they would swing low over London, dropping their bombs. And if you ever have an opportunity, Rochelle, to look up Edward R. Murrow, World War II, and listen to some of that audio, you will understand why he was such a legend in broadcasting. And I'll throw out a couple of other names that I know Kevin is quite aware of. Paul Harvey, he was another one who mastered the art of being able to say a whole lot with just a few words. And that's what we tried to do at our station in Denver and throughout my career there, is to write in a way that, yes, got your attention, was conversational, but also, again, had all the other elements we needed: the accuracy, the fairness, the objectivity. We didn't always hit the target, but we tried.
And Jack, I just have to tell you, I'm floored because Brushwood Media Network, the syndicated network I work with, they got an email. They got an email at 12:55. My show airs at 5 and then again at midnight. So it was right at the end of that show. And the lady sent the email that said, "I just want you to know I'm listening to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald." And it brought back memories of when my dad and I used to listen to Paul Harvey 10 years ago before he passed.
Yeah.
Speaking of her dad, and going, he made me cry and he made me laugh. And that is the highest compliment that I could possibly get. And there's one more name I want to bring up, and it's like Walter Cronkite.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if it's still there, but in Washington, D.C., I was part of the Gannett Broadcasting family. It's now known as Tegna. And it was part of an empire that included USA Today and newspapers. It was huge. but they operated this place called the Newseum, not museum, but museum. And they preserved things like teletypes when they were still a thing. And I don't know, again, Rochelle, sorry to always bring these old-timey references to you, but they were like heavy-duty typewriters mounted in a cabinet. And they would feed out scrolls of news that you had to go and rip the paper as the news person. And that was where the term rip and read came from. It was kind of an insult to people that weren't writing original copy. They would just rip it off a teletype and read what the AP writer had written in Washington or Dallas or New York. But anyway, they had teletypes in there. And they also had, Kevin, the studio camera that Walter Cronkite looked into all those years, preserved and mounted in that museum. So you could sit in an anchor chair and look right into the lens and look at the tally light that he spent thousands of hours in front of.
And the one that's the most famous, when he announced the death of the 36th president of the United States, which was John Kennedy. And Brachelle, you know what, Brachelle? I got an idea. I think Jack needs to write another book, and I think he needs to make it about the history of media in Denver for your time there, because it is fascinating.
Well, it really is. And I've just spent so much time with my great grandpa. I mean, his grandpa was there, and people even before that. And he actually has 2 of those machines. He collects things that are absolutely insane. He has one of the first 1,000 or something of the first Coke machines they ever made, just sitting just outside. And there is so much history that I have learned through him. And it's not even just being there, but what is there that kind of slows you down, because I learned things through him that is a blessing. I mean, not many people get to go and do those things. And he tasked me when I passed, what do you want of my stuff? I said, I just want your building, because the building itself has been able to collect so much of that past and in such a positive way. And he loves all his things, and he knows who he got it from and why he won't sell it and what it's worth. And it's really beautiful. I mean, there's a lot of us now in this day and age are just like, we need everything to just be modern. And if you come into my room, I don't have modern things, pictures, this and that. I have meaningful things. I have plants, sticks, rocks, bugs. Yes, I've got it all. But it's life, it's history, it's a story, and it's me.
Well, that's beautiful. And if I could just encourage you, unless you've already done it, get an oral history with him while you still can. Okay. One of the beautiful things about writing my book was I had access to my Aunt Eve's oral history about the Douglas family and about Poppy and all of these things. It was invaluable. And to hear her voice again after all the years, because she has passed away, was such a gift. Please do it while you still can.
Okay.
And you're going to have to come back. We've got a lot more to talk about, because we haven't even got to Sand Goat Manor Publishing yet. And we need to get to, and we'll run out of time, Jack. But I want to thank you for being here. You are sensational, and it was a great show, and it was a lot of fun to have you here.
Well, likewise, you guys are gems, and I just appreciate the time that you so generously gave me.
Well, we got more to generously give you too.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody. We've had a great week here. Everybody, please be careful. If you're listening to this on or about this date, which is which is the 13th, this weekend's going to be a little tough. So please, everybody, be careful. And Jack, thank you so much for being here.
Yep. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin